We are diving proper into the Elbaph arc, but with it there's a lot of details that might be easy to miss, such as the treasure tree Adam's implications with the sun tree Eve and Marie-Joie, the fact that this chapter proves that Shiki the Golden Lion visited Elbaph in the past, and the way Elbaph's realms are divided. So let's break down this chapter of One Piece. On the cover we see Yamato riding Komachio to locate the thief of the sword. Joining the hunt are Speed and Otama, with Speed having decided to stay by Otama's side. Considering that it has been over a month since Speed was first fed at the start of Wano, from March 3rd back then to around April the 9th now, Tama's powers must have worn off, as they only last a month, meaning that Speed has decided to stay at Otama's side out of her own volition. Her clothing is also more like a proper Wano kimono, which makes sense as Speed was originally a citizen of the Wano country that betrayed her nation for the sake of joining the Peace Pirates. A little detail I forgot to mention last time, even though it was visible, is that Loki appears to be carrying a massive hammer on his back, which can be seen here better, which presumably would be his weapon of choice. In Norse mythology, if we're talking of hammers, of course we have to think of the Mjolnir, but said hammer pertained to Thor, the thunder god, not Loki. As such, being Thor's hammer, it was able to summon lightning. Interestingly, the top tip of the hammer is completely black here, but it's unknown if this is due to a specific material the hammer is made of, or if this could actually be a black blade, but instead of infusing a sword with haki, Loki infused his haki into a hammer. Another detail that is easy to miss if you aren't paying attention to all the text is that in his title text, it states that he has received a special bounty from the world government, likely stated that way as he isn't an actual pirate, but still a criminal, which goes all the way to 2.6 billion belly. This staggering bounty is the 8th highest government bounty in the series, or 13th if you count the cross-guild bounties, only putting him under the Yonko, Mihawk, and the Admirals, plus Sakazuki and Garp. On the other hand, it is 16th overall for all bounties ever issued in the series. It's also the only bounty we've had on the 2 billion range, aside from Blackbeard's original post-timeskip bounty. Loki claims again that he is the sun god, which has been passed down this country for generations, which reinforces my belief from last chapter that Loki's fruit literally has to do with being the sun god. After all, he claims it is something that has been passed down across generations, just like the fruit his father Harold had, so it just would make sense if his fruit makes him a sun god of sorts. But since Luffy has the Nika fruit, it again makes us wonder just what type of sun god. Interestingly, hearing Loki speak, you can tell that his speech pattern is a bit calmer than it first seemed last time. He is definitely quite the psychopath, but he's also a lot more calculating than he first seems, adding to his trickster persona just like Loki. His scream rattles the wolves nearby, as well as a reindeer and what looks like a yeti-like creature. He explains that he has been chained for 6 years, so since the year 1518. The only two majorly relevant plot points from that year are Kuma's one-man revolution, which isn't really relevant here, but a far more relevant point would be Shanks becoming one of the 4 emperors. And given Loki's latter mention of Shanks, surely there's a connection here. Given how he's been chained here for so long though, I wonder how he has been fed this whole time, maybe with someone feeding him or maybe tying into his powers. However, Loki drops us a very big revelation as he gives us the name of the Yggdrasil-like tree, the treasure tree Adam. This name should be familiar as it's a tree that has been introduced long ago in the story. In chapter 431, Frankie mentioned, far away there is a war-torn island. On that war-torn island is a tree. Whether humans on the island fight wars or rain it cannonballs from the sky, or whether they all die off and their buildings turn to ruins, the tree always remains. It can't be chopped down. People have gathered around it and created a settlement, and then a nation. There's very few like it. That strongest tree in the world is the treasure tree Adam. Thinking about it, Frankie's words were more literal than we thought. The war-torn island he spoke of was literally the kingdom of Warland. Frankie explained how a few of the wood from the treasure tree Adam makes its way to the black market, which does make me wonder just who exactly is harvesting some of this wood from Elbaph. But given how hard it must be to attain, understandably it fetches a really high price, which Frankie needed to pay 200 million belly just to attain enough wood to build the 1000 Sunny. With it though, he's made the Sunny so robust that no normal cannonballs could damage it, making it an incredibly strong and durable ship. Goldie Roger's ship, the Otto Jackson, was also built with Adam wood that Tom used to craft it. With how resistant this wood is, it makes sense that Loki can't just rip off the entire tree to escape, especially with his chains being made of Kairoseki sea stone too, likely blocking his Dalfur 2 in the process. He claims there's a key in the village, which is his only way out. At the same time though, the treasure tree Adam is one of 2 colossal trees in the One Piece world, because there is another even more colossal known as the Sun Tree Eve. Said tree is seemingly encrusted within the Red Line, with its roots reaching all the way down to Fishman Island, and its top said to be at the surface, seemingly at the top of the Red Line, meaning the whole tree stretches for countless kilometers, well over 10,000 kilometers. Its roots were so colossal they even dwarfed the massive Fishman Island or the colossally long Sea Kings, which, keep in mind, can stretch up to 5,000 meters, so you can just imagine just how big this tree is, probably even bigger than the Adam. The tree is actually a Yarukiman mangrove, the same type as those of Shabondi, which are believed to be its smaller spawns, and it's the reason why it can create a bubble atmosphere where bubbles generate, which is why bubbles work in Marijua as well as Fishman Island, because of this tree. It is bioluminescent, which is how the people of Fishman Island get their light from the sun. Of course, the connection couldn't be more obvious. Adam and Eve, the 2 figures from the tale of Genesis, said to have been in the garden of God, but being kicked after the devil deceived them and forced them to eat a forbidden fruit. So what if in the One Piece world there is a similar story of the devil Emu having deceived the people of the God country to eat the devil fruits, and thus usurped and took their land? Many have long since speculated that the Elbaph tree was the treasure tree Adam, but at the same time many now still speculate that the Sun Tree Eve could be the tree from where devil fruits originate, obviously enough. Hopefully we'll soon learn more about the latter and the connection between the two. After all, even Usopp during Fishman Island, after Neptune explained the Sun Tree Eve, wondered if there is a connection between the Sun Tree Eve and the treasure tree Adam. In this shot of the tree Adam, we also get to spot the top of the tree, which doesn't seem to have anything on top of it like we thought it could have. The top looks a lot lighter in color, but that's probably due to being bathed by the sun. Next, Loki explains that this is the underworld of Elbaph, or Meikai in Japanese. He explains that since the sun doesn't reach here much, due to being covered by the thick leaves of the trees, a colder climate has developed, which is why it snows. This also has its symbolism though, because given the importance of the sun in Elbaph mythology, it's as if this land has been abandoned by the sun. Many giants prefer not to live here, instead preferring to live up top with the leaves, which is where we see the village, castle, lake, and rainbow. The rainbow in particular potentially being the iconic Bifrost rainbow bridge of Nordic myth that leads to Asgard. He further elaborates that the underworld is the area where there is land, a place no one dares go near, being treated as a prison or execution grounds, something we already heard from Road about that castle where the Straw Hats were trapped. This also lines up with what we speculated last week, that each of the realms of Elbaph might be themed after the 9 realms of the Yggdrasil in Norse mythology, with this one serving as the realm of Niflheim, which is the frozen underworld where people are trapped as punishment, just as Loki describes it to be here. Even Loki himself describes this area in their mythology as the first world, thus the first of 9 worlds. Particularly, he locates it within a chain of snowy mountains, what we've seen from the outside claim to have existed for tens of thousands of years, which geologically may not be much, but in terms of One Piece history is definitely a surreal number to think about. Each mountain has its own master animal, which Loki has managed to befriend. In this case, we see a massive polar bear, a massive gorilla, a massive black wolf with a large scar on its eye and a fiery mane, and a large snake like the one that Luffy defeated in Rhodes' room, as well as a mammoth. So much for Jack's fruit being an ancient model. In Egghead, Dory and Bragi compare the Gorosei to the large beasts of Elbaph, so in this case, I can kinda understand where they were coming from. Some of these species might seem slightly familiar though, and if you have good memory, you might realize, for example, that we've already seen the gorilla before, as it was a species we saw during Strong World. Oda has actually already showed some creatures from Strong World across the story, like one of the centipedes from the movie appearing during Totolan in chapter 828, so it makes sense that more of them are appearing one by one, as Shiki must have gotten them from somewhere even if slightly unevolved. But the fact that we see this many all in one place might suggest something massive, that Shiki may have actually visited Elbaph in order to form his grand army by stealing away the animals of Elbaph in order to evolve them and create his unstoppable army. So think of just how dangerous the animals of Elbaph are when Shiki thought that he could create an army to take over the entire world with them. This one, for example, is known as the Delkong, a giant gorilla with spiky proportions. The mammoth also looks similar to the mammoth dens, another creature from Strong World. And finally, the snake is also from Strong World as well, being the Dasoku, with the evolved version in Strong World looking like a similar snake but with several more feet like a centipede. The bear is a Teruguma, a bear with really strong long arms, and even the Yeti-like creature we saw before is actually a scream buffalo, another creature from Strong World. The wolf is pretty much the only new one here. However, Luffy calls it a nostalgic feeling being next to so many big creatures, as he's reminded of all the creatures he had to fight and then befriend in Rusukaina, so he instantly befriends them as well. Interestingly, there's also humans on the island, stating that they picked a fight with Elbaph, which survived by carrying smelly animal corpses to confuse the creatures and all wear gas masks. Being a human in Elbaph definitely isn't an easy thing, but I'm interested to know more about them in the future. They call Loki as Loki-sama or Master Loki, so they seem subservient to an extent. When Loki hears Luffy reacting positively to Shanks' name though, he wants to provoke Luffy, claiming that he knows Shanks, the pirate coward. This irritates Luffy, who quickly switches to Gear 4th, but Loki is able to dodge it. As Luffy transforms back, the island's animals look absolutely terrified of him, with the wolf even shaking. Luffy then asks several questions: why Shanks came to Elbaph, which he feels it surely can't just have been to meet Loki, and if Shanks is still in Elbaph. We know the latter at least to not be the case, as we saw recently Shanks was busy hunting down Bartolomeo, but that doesn't necessarily exclude him potentially coming to the island later on. For the rest of the answers though, we'll need to wrangling them out of Loki, as he isn't willing to give them out for free, and the price for that would surely be getting freed from his chains. But why was he called a coward? Does it have to do with not wanting to face Loki, or someone else? Who could Shanks even turn away from? Or is it just the fact that Shanks is a pacifist in general and thus Loki sees him as a coward? We then see that Road, followed by Girth and Goldberg, which they called Female Warrior and Chubby, are chasing after these Straw Hats. Road might be mad, but given how Goldberg is carrying the Sunny, I do think that they are trying to be nice and this is all just a misunderstanding, as Girth and Goldberg at least would side with the Straw Hats. We then get to see the rest of the crew with Hajrudin and the shipwright Stansen. As a reminder that we are told of Hajrudin's role in Dressrosa here, Stansen was also the same giant as Shabondi, who was at the auction house and was freed by Rayleigh, later getting the chance to return home. The animal they defeated might be familiar, as it too is a creature from Strong World. This is known as the Ettosaurus, with the kanji reading as Wintersaurus, which is a cross between a dinosaur and a reindeer, living in cold climates as suggested by its name. Hajrudin simply calls it a Herazika though, which is the Japanese word for moose, even if it isn't quite one. He also states that he is hunting it to serve its meat to the Straw Hats. Interestingly, Stansen mentions something called the Beinta, being something that he can't use due to its knowing so much, which would seemingly have made carrying the Ettosaurus back easier. But the kanji reading is that of Taiyoseki, or sunstone. In this case, it means this is likely what is known to us as a sunstone, which was a type of rudimentary compass that the Vikings used, supposedly to locate the sun even when skies were clouded. So in this case, Stansen means that he wished to use his sunstone to locate the sun, but due to all the snow, it's just impossible, meaning they have to find their way back through instinct. Speaking of Strong World creatures, it doesn't stop there, as there's yet another one that cruises past the Great Erik, being the Bakuzame, or the Chomp Shark. This massive snake-like shark is quite fierce, and yet it was quickly eaten and devoured by an army of Guntai Ari, or army ants in the movie, in just a few seconds when they were trying to assault Robin and Frankie at the start of the film, if you remember. On the ship itself, Robin has gone for a much familiar haircut, making herself look like she did pre-time skip. Given how we haven't had a change in look since the Prey timeskip, it's actually really refreshing to see someone get such a change, such a haircut at this point in the story. Since this is what Robin looked like when she was a kid, she hopes Saul will recognize her better with this look, a reunion she's really looking forward to. However, as they prepare to make landfall, something horrible happens. A giant comes in screaming on the upper levels where the town is, claiming that Saul Sensei has collapsed and can't move. Now, first of all, Saul here is referred to as Sensei. This is something that was already hinted at during Egghead, when Dorian Broggy similarly referred to Saul as a scholar. Sensei, as you likely know, is a honorific referring to someone who is a teacher or master in some craft, so in this case he would be Professor Saul. This would make sense, as he was the one who preserved the research and library of Ohara, so it makes sense if he tried to educate himself to become a scholar and understand more about the Void Century. However, in this case he has seemingly collapsed, or taoreta in Japanese, to fall, and can't move due to some reason. Just what happened to him? Did he get poisoned? Does he have an illness, or did something else happen? And who is this giant bearing the news whose face is covered? What about the mysterious silhouette we saw a while ago at Elbaph? I suppose these mysteries will explain themselves soon as we get into the thick of the Elbaph arc.